Hello, today is the fourth episode, and we're going to be talking about AEW's roster size and how you would go about not only training all the people that you have and helping them find the look that they want and the personality they want for their run in All Elite Wrestling, but we're also going to be talking about how you would satisfy that many wrestlers because any wrestler wants to know they're getting enough exposure for their investment to be worth it rather than losing years and years for a chance to finally be seen on the main show. Second thing we're going to be talking about is working with other promotions and the effects that could have on the roster. And the third thing we're going to be talking about is a possible streaming service or an extra show, a B-level show being put on by All Elite Wrestling that would tie into helping some of the wrestlers who don't make it to the main show all the time to still be satisfied in knowing that they're still getting some exposure and also capitalizing on making as much content as possible. Now, the first thing we're going to be talking about is the roster size. Now, Cody Rhodes said recently that we only knew about 42% of the roster. Now, when he said this, there was 37 male and 15 female known, 52. And math can tell us that 52 is 40% of 130. Wrestle Talk had mentioned 115. Those guys are great, so my math might be off a bit. But 52 is 40% of 130. So between 115 and 130 wrestlers is what we know about right now, and so far we've seen 50 something, like maybe 60, very very top limit of what we might have seen so far. So you got to think about everybody we know about, plus like up until Fight for the Fallen, there was people who didn't even appear at Fight for the Fallen. Now, and that was 4 hours. Now add on to that. From that point to now, add on another 25 wrestlers. Add 25 people onto the total amount we knew about the Fallen, which was 4 hours in itself. And then you got 80 wrestlers. Now, what we knew about plus another 25, 80 wrestlers is enough to keep the 2-hour show busy and full for a long time. Now, on top of that 80, add upwards of another 50. Like, basically, you are more than doubling. You're well more than doubling the size of the roster of what we knew about going into Fight for the Fallen. That's the total amount of people we have. Upwards to 130 people. Like, it's going to be difficult to satisfy that many wrestlers with only a once-a-week, 2-hour live weekly TV show. There's got to be another part to All Elite Wrestling's strategy in terms of having the roster they have and having the show and utilizing their talent and broadening their product. There's got to be a lot more to it than we don't know about. I just don't see how there's not. Like, they have one weekly TV show of 2 hours. Like, how are you going to satisfy that? I don't understand how you could have upwards of 130 wrestlers once a week. You have a 2-hour live weekly TV show. And then you have house shows. And then a lot of these wrestlers obviously will be appearing at these house shows. And they'll be wrestling and stuff. Because Tony Khan said maybe about 120 shows a year. 51 episodes of Wednesday Night Dynamite. And then another 52 or maybe upwards of another 70 house shows. Now, those house shows are, from what we know so far, are not going to be televised. They're not going to be recorded. They're not going to be made available through streaming somehow, which we're going to get into a bit later. But that leads me to believe that there's, like, if that's their plan, is to have house shows and then Wednesday Night Dynamite, they're not doing themselves any favors. Because wrestlers are not going to want to stick around if, like, there's... Like, you're a wrestler, there's another 129 other guys, and there's only a TV show once a week for 2 hours. Like, guys are not going to stick around because they know that they're never going to get a chance to get enough exposure. You know what I mean? You get a match, 2 matches a month. You know what I mean? Like, on the actual show. People are not going to be satisfied with that. So All Elite Wrestling needs to do something to satisfy the total amount of people. They could potentially make these house shows available, but that'll be in the third section we talk about at the end of this video. Now, the other part about having such a big roster is that you have 130, let's just say, and then about 52, so that would leave 78. That would leave 78 wrestlers that we don't know about. Now, if we take our calculators and we take 78 divided by 4, that equals 19.5. So let's say 20. Because you've got the men's singles, the men's tag, the women's singles, and the women's tag. Now, if they have 78 wrestlers approximately left over, that's upwards of 20 wrestlers that's going to be inserted into each section. Because I've got to believe that All Elite Wrestling wants the rosters to be equal. They want them to be around the same size. That's going to be a bit hard for the women's roster because All Elite Wrestling, from what I can see, seems to be having a bit of a difficulty attracting female wrestlers. They do. I mean, right now we know about 15 wrestlers on the women's roster, and the Casino Battle Royale is going to have like 21 participants. So there's upwards of 7 wrestlers that we still don't know about that they have to announce between now and the 31st. So if we know about 78 that we haven't seen yet, and we divide that by 4, that's roughly almost 20 for each of the 4 divisions: men's singles, men's tag, women's singles, women's tag. So that's going to be quite interesting. I mean, you think about 20 guys being added to the men's roster for the singles, then another 20 added to the tag, then the women's singles, and then the women's tag. 20 people is a lot. That's huge. That's huge. Think about 20 people being added to the men's singles roster. Like, how are you going to satisfy that many guys going for the title? And you only got one TV show once a week for 2 hours. And the thing is, working with independent promotions, ties into the second part that relates to the first part where we just talked about the roster, the size, satisfying that many people, the potential amount of new wrestlers being added to each division. So this ties into the second part, working with other promotions. Now, in order for All Elite Wrestling to be working with another promotion, they have to be putting out their best guys, the most known guys, the guys with the most exposure, the girls with the most exposure. Because if you send a nobody or somebody who nobody's really seen yet to an independent show, then people are not going to know who they are. It's not going to be a bump for that independent show. People are not going to want to tune in. I mean, if they have, like, I don't know, Christopher Blanchard, let's just say he's some wrestler that we don't know about that they do have signed, and he's part of the All Elite Wrestling roster. He hasn't been announced yet, right? So you get him, Christopher Blanchard, and you send him to, like, OWE, or you send him to AAA. That's not a bump. People are not going to be like, oh my God, it's Christopher Blanchard. Nobody knows who he is. I mean, a few people might know who he is, but not to the level where having him wrestle at your independent show is going to be a bump for you. You would be like, hey, AEW, you need to send somebody bigger. I'm sure this guy will be big, but right now he's not. We need a bump now. So I've got to believe that the people who they haven't announced yet, either A, are already big names in themselves and they don't need exposure to give a bump, a good bump up to those independent promotions, or their known guys are going to be doing a lot of, like, appearances at other promotions, and the less known guys are going to be getting exposure off the start. Because if they're not, then this partnership approach that All Elite Wrestling has with creating partnerships with other promotions, it's going to fail. It is. I mean, once they go to a weekly TV show full time, 51 episodes a year. They're going to be and constant house shows. Like, there's not going to be an off season to get involved with those other independent promotions like there is now. So going forward, I've got to believe that there's going to be people involved in those other promotions while TV is going on, a rotating basis of working with these other places. But the thing is, the people who work with these other places have to be known. So that means that there's going to have to be a lot of rotation on their roster to get more people known than who we consider stars now. And what that also means, for the current moment, their bigger stars are going to have to be... I mean, if All Elite Wrestling wants to create partnerships with other venues, in other venues with other promotions, those promotions are only going to be considered to be worth their time if the person who's being sent is known, you know? And that would require Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, MJF, Shima, you know what I mean, Christopher Daniels. These are the guys that are going to have a chance of giving a bump to the other promotions at this moment in time. Those are your biggest stars, and you're sacrificing a lot. I mean, number one, you're sacrificing people's desires to tune into the episodes. You really are, because those are the guys who are going to make people want to tune into your shows. I'm sorry, but they are. For a while, I'd say for the next 6 months minimum, you're going to have to get those stars working hot and heavy for the first 6 months to build up their fame, so people tune in and are familiar enough with the product, and them and the other stars that would appear on the first couple of matches on the episode to get exposure. So 6 months in, the big guys are well established, and those smaller guys doing the matches off the start become known through that 6 months. So I think that's what All Elite Wrestling's approach is going to be. But in the future, and as of right now, working with these other promotions is being a detriment. It's totally being a detriment to them, because you think about Bae Priestley, I think Aja Kong, Awesome Kong. They cannot appear at All Out because they're doing matches in Japan for promotions over there. Like, there's I don't know of one female match announced for All Out. We know of the Casino Battle Royale, but I can't think of a match off the top of my head where it's... Oh yes, Hero... Rio versus Shakazaki, I believe. I can't remember her last name. But Rio versus her, that is a singles match. And then outside of that, is a women's Casino Battle Royal. That's it. Everything else is male matches. And I mean, you got Bae Priestley. Both Awesome and Aja Kong are not involved. Jon Moxley just got a staph infection from wrestling over in Japan. It came back. He's also been working wrestling independent shows as well. And then you got Rey Fenix, who had an injury scare, who was part of the ladder match. So it's been reported now it was just an injury scare and his leg is not broken or anything. You know what I mean? Like, you lose Jon Moxley, they get Pac. I think personally Pac is... I think he's a better wrestler than Jon Moxley, to be honest. I haven't seen Jon Moxley do much for me to believe that he has a repertoire much more than what Stone Cold's was. I mean, the guy, to me, Jon Moxley comes off as a cross between Stone Cold, Steve Austin, and Triple H, maybe. Triple H to a small degree. A lot of Stone Cold influence in there. And that's just a straightforward beatdown type approach. And I've seen him wrestle, and then I've seen Pac wrestle, and I think Pac is a better repertoire, so I think that's going to be a much better match. But that's a side tangent. I like Pac better anyway, to be honest. But it's coming to a detriment. I mean, Jon Moxley's out. Thank God they were able to get Pac. And then Rey Fenix. Imagine if he was injured. Imagine if they had to cancel that ladder match. That's a huge black mark to All Elite Wrestling. That looks really, really, really bad. And WWE, I guarantee you, Vince and Triple H have been talking and Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, probably the four of those guys have been like talking together. And I guarantee you they've been laughing at this, saying All Elite Wrestling wants to save the wrestling world. They want to liberate all the other promotions. One of their two biggest matches, arguably their most high star power match, is now fundamentally altered because their guy was injured in another promotion. And then Rey Fenix, their ladder match for the AAA Tag Team Championships, almost got canceled because we thought Rey Fenix was injured. He's not, thank God. But the roster is getting beat up. The roster is getting injured. The roster is causing matches to be canceled or changed in the biggest pay-per-view of the year that they have. I really think Tony Khan needs to sit down and reevaluate his strategy. I mean, working with other promotions, that's not to the benefit of AEW. Like, it is, but not as much as what Tony Khan might think it is. That, I think, the primary drive behind allowing the wrestlers to work with other promotions is to satisfy them to want to work with AEW. I think that's the biggest part of it, to be honest. I hate to say it, but yeah. And it might change in a year from now once AEW gets big enough and the ratings get big enough and then their merchandise gets, like, a catalog gets to be large enough for people to buy it and make money and for the promotion to go to bigger venues and stuff. I think that at that point there might be less of a desire by the wrestlers to work with other promotions because All Elite Wrestling will be big enough for them to get the star power, the pay, and exposure they want. But right now, for the first 6 months minimum, starting at the beginning of the TV season, I think that working with other promotions is still going to be a high thing. And if I was Tony Khan, I don't think I would want it. I don't really think that he wants it to the level of what the roster wants it, but I think he's agreeing to it because he wants to satisfy the wrestlers he has to stay with All Elite Wrestling. But, I mean, Babe Priestley and Britt Baker were in a tag match at Fight for the Fallen, and they were intertangled on the mat fighting with each other. And even Jim Ross said, it looks like this is a future all-out match in the making. It would have been huge. I mean, when you were watching that match with Britt Baker team with Rio going against Babe Priestley and Shiro Sakazaki, do not try to tell me that you would rather see Rio and Sakazaki over Britt Baker versus Babe Priestley. Because Baker versus Priestley, that's the match everybody wanted to see. Even Jim Ross had called that. And instead they're having Rio and Sakazaki. Nobody wanted Rio and Sakazaki. Everybody wanted Baker and Priestley. You know it's true. Don't give me that it's not. And then here we are at All Out. So that's the match we got, Rio and Saka. And then there's the Casino Battle Royale. And Brandy Rhodes is involved in it. Same thing with Britt Baker. Like, I don't think Brandy Rhodes is going to win the Casino Battle Royale. I really don't think she's going to win. I think Britt Baker is going to win the Casino Battle Royale. And then I think that Rio is going to win against Sakazaki. And then it's going to be Rio versus Britt Baker for the Women's Championship on the first TV episode. I think Britt Baker is going to take it. And then I think there's going to be a tournament to decide the number one contendership. I'm going to predict that Babe Priestley wins the number one contendership. And then she goes on to become the second AEW Women's Champion. That's what I think that's going to happen with her. And that can't happen now. Babe Priestley can't appear now because she's working with other promotions. She can't appear at All Out. Jon Moxley's injured. He can't appear at All Out. Like, Rey Fenix almost had to back out of All Out. Like, it's a good thing Rey Fenix wasn't injured, and it's a good thing they got Pac to replace him because if they would have had to replace Pac, like with him, like they would have the two biggest stars they have besides Pac is Dustin Rhodes and MJF. That's it. You know what I mean? And they're very lucky that they're in a position where they have those few guys because without one of those three guys, who knows what would happen. And Dustin Rhodes, I know he wants to go for the heavyweight championship. He had mentioned that he can still do it. But, I mean, what with him doing, like, acting and casting, and he did Cutter Bill, now he's doing another one. So I would be very surprised if he would be available to fight right now. I hope he wins the World Heavyweight Championship. The surprising thing is Dusty Rhodes, Cody Rhodes, and Dustin Rhodes. Neither one of those guys ever won a WCW Heavyweight Championship, WWE Heavyweight Championship, TNA Heavyweight Championship, or ECW Championship. None of the Rhodes men ever won any of those heavyweight championships. And All Elite Wrestling is definitely at equal level to what WCW was right now. Not WCW's height, but definitely equal to a number of periods of what WCW was. So I think Dustin Rhodes should win it. But if I was Tony Khan, I'd be like, listen, guys, this working with other promotions thing, we're going to have to sit down and reevaluate it. Because All Out, it was supposed to be big, and it's still big, but it's taken a couple of blows. And I'm very surprised, and I'm going to predict that New Japan Pro Wrestling has a partnership with All Elite Wrestling, but they're not saying it right now. Now, you can tell me no, but think about it. Jon Moxley goes over there and wins the United States Championship. Chris Jericho went over there fighting for the Heavyweight Championship. He didn't get it, but he fought for it. I think Bae Priestley is involved with them, or one of the Kongs. I know that there's more than just Jon Moxley involved with New Japan Pro Wrestling right now. And I just... I really think that Jon Moxley was going to end up announcing that his United States Championship was going to be his New Japan Pro Wrestling's United States Championship was going to be on the line against Kenny Omega at All Out, which would have been the announcement that NJPW was in partnership with AEW. Imagine if that would have happened at All Out. That would have been huge. That would have been huge. That would have taken All Out and catapulted it to, like, the height. That in and of itself would practically do it on its own. And then CM Punk appearing, even though I personally don't like the guy and I think that he's a whiny bitch, but a lot of other people like him. Those two things happening would have taken that event and put it to the very top. And I think that's what All Elite Wrestling was shooting for. I think that's what they were hoping for. But I don't think that... CM Punk is not going to appear. He's not. I mean, his agent was in contact with WWE about him being a podcast host. All Elite Wrestling might be okay with that, but I guarantee you WWE would never want anybody with them involved with All Elite Wrestling. The closest thing we have right now is Britt Baker's boyfriend or husband being Adam Cole, who's in NXT right now. That's the only possible tie that AEW has with WWE. And so, like, this partnership with other promotions really needs to be scaled back. It needs to be scaled back. If I was Tony Khan, I would be fucking pissed. I would be really angry right now, man. I would not be happy. Jon Moxley would not be in my good books, and Bae Priestley would not be in my good books at all. At all. Like, period. I'd be really, really angry with those two people. But the bottom line is that working with other promotions, they've got two hurdles. Number one, they're going to have to send names that people know, because that's the only way it's worth it for the independent promotion to be working with AEW, because the point of it is for those smaller promotions to get a bump. And then the other part of it is telling your own roster, like, look, you can work with these other promotions because we do want partnerships with them, but we're going to have to sit down and figure something out in terms of these injuries and us having to cancel and reschedule matches and stuff like that. So I think that's going to have to be considered, because UFC is a real fighting championship. Like, that UFC is real, and you don't see them with the same problems that AEW has in terms of fighters being injured. It happens sometimes in training, but not very often with UFC. So AEW has to talk about a number of things with the roster in terms of working with other promotions. Now, the third thing we're going to be talking about is a potential streaming service. I think that AEW, if they're going to do upwards of 70 house shows a year, they should take these shows, And they'll be on a lower budget. They won't be as big and as produced as what Wednesday Night Dynamite is. But the budget will be smaller. They'll be in smaller venues, maybe between 4,000 and 5,000 people, stuff like that. And or maybe a little bit lower, but they're house shows, so that's fine. The budget will be small. There probably won't be any pyro or anything. But still, the matches will be great. And if they record these matches, if they have a camera crew there, and they're like recording these matches, and then they put it on a streaming service, if they develop an app, their own service on their website, and record these matches and put it on their website for free, or put it on their YouTube channel for free, or if they say pay $10 a month, and we're going to have 1 hour episodes of Being the Elite every week. And they're going to be an hour long, and they're going to be really well produced, and those are going to be furthering the storyline. We're also going to have the Road 2 series continue, and that is going to be interviews and promos and stuff like that, showing the follow-up to the next pay-per-view type thing. And Being the Elite is from week to week, the developments of the characters, the developments of their personalities and the storylines and stuff like that. And then the Road 2 will be hyping and building the pay-per-views type thing. They could definitely find a balance with that too. So All Elite Wrestling has 2 series that they have right now on a very small scale, but they could produce on a bigger scale if they had their own streaming service, and you take those house shows and you add it into the mix. That would be a way of not only boosting up the content that they're creating without stretching themselves like WWE, but it would also be another way of satisfying the wrestlers they have, because they could have upwards of 130 wrestlers right now. They got one TV show once a week for 2 hours. 130 wrestlers, and there's only 2 hours of TV a week. Like, maybe for the first few months, the wrestlers will be happy. But after that, I guarantee you by January, February, they're going to have wrestlers who want to get some exposure. You don't have much of a chance to give exposure with only that small of a TV window. So these independent shows, these house shows, will have to be recorded. They'll have to put them on Fight TV, perhaps. Maybe they'll be like $5 an episode, $5 a week. If you want to watch the weekly episodes of the house shows, or maybe $10 a month, and then you could watch these, like, you get a subscription to AEW, you pay $10 a month, and then you get like these house shows, and then like number of maybe 3 months after the fact, they might take these old pay-per-views and add them to it, right, to their channel on Fight TV, so it started boosting up the content that they have. And they could also take the Road 2 and Being the Elite and produce them on a higher level to some degree. And that would add a couple more shows that they have that would be advancing storylines and building the hype for the pay-per-views. So that would be a good balance between all the two. But I think that's what they need to do. Their house shows need to be recorded. They need to be put out there. They definitely need to understand that they need to be putting out more than 2 hours a week to satisfy 130 wrestlers. Because if that's all they got, I guarantee you 6 months from now, they're just going to be guys leaving. They're not getting any exposure. I think that's one advantage a WWE has over AEW, is that WWE can promise the exposure. All Elite Wrestling can't really do that. They may have a good TV deal, and it might be a well-produced show and stuff, and they've got as many big names in their company as possible, but they've only got 2 hours a week. So recording the house shows and putting them out there, and Being the Elite and the Road 2 series, those 3 things, those are 3 ways that they could give exposure to those guys. They're going to have to. They have to. So that's the third thing. And another thing I want to tack on here, that relates to the first part with the size of the roster. Out of the wrestlers that they have, which averages out to be roughly 20 people added into each of the 4 divisions. The male single division needs to have 3 more big guys. They do. 3 more big guys or 3 brick shit houses. That's what they need. If I was Tony Khan, I would love to get Brian Cage. He was at the Casino Battle Royale at Double or Nothing. It was about to go on, but Impact Wrestling stopped him at the last minute because they said he can't work for any other promotion, which sucks. But anyway, if I was Tony Khan, I would want to add Brian Cage, Nick Aldis, and maybe Rhino to my roster, and you add them with Luchasaurus as 4 big guys. That you add that to the current roster, and I think it would be perfectly balanced. I really do. But they need that. But there can be upwards of 20 guys who are going to add. So I guarantee you they've got at least 3 big guys. Even if we don't know who they are, they've got to have 3 big guys. Even Cody Rhodes back a number of months ago, I can't remember what word he used, but he said that they were looking for a couple of big guys. So it's going to be interesting to see who they have to fill those spots. And another thing I got to say is about the tag division. The tag division is big enough. There's enough teams in it to make me happy. With another 20 people, potentially 20 people allocated to the tag division, I would have to believe that there's going to be well more than enough. There's obviously going to be well more than enough tag teams. There's almost enough tag teams as it is now. But the repertoires need to improve. They need to incorporate more moves. The only thing I see so far is flip super kick parties and people landing on their heads, DDTs. Now, I love DDTs myself, personally. There could be a match with nothing but people landing on their head, you know? And I would almost be happy with that, but not completely. I mean, they need to incorporate stuff like Russian leg sweeps, more German suplexes, drop toe holds, torture racks, submissions. That's another thing that they need to incorporate is more submissions. All Elite Wrestling needs more submissions. There's not nearly enough submissions. Off the top of my head, I can only think of 2. I believe. MJF was put in the sharpshooter by Hangman Page at Flaterfest, I believe. Or MJF put somebody else in the sharpshooter. One of the 2. I know the sharpshooter was done. I could almost bet money on that. And then there was one other submission move. Shima did a submission move on Christopher Daniels at Fyter Fest as well, and Christopher Daniels did a really good job of selling it. But those are, off the top of my head, those are the only 2 I can think of. Like, they need to incorporate more submission moves. Darby Allin did one against Cody Rhodes that looked really cool. It looked cool. I bet you if you got the right angle and torqued enough, you could do damage with that. But their tag division needs to incorporate more wrestling, like more than just flip super kicks and DDTs. I love people landing on their head, like scoring a goal in hockey. Well, landing on your head in wrestling is equivalent of scoring a goal in hockey, in my opinion. That's really what it is. But there needs to be more than just that, you know. So I think the tag division is big enough. It'll be definitely more than big enough once the other 78 are eventually announced and become involved with exposure and the matches and stuff. But as it stands right now, they need to incorporate more moves. They need to be doing more than what they are. The women's roster, no secret, needs to be bigger. Of the 78 wrestlers that we don't know about, I damn well hope they have 10 more non-Japanese wrestlers involved. Non-Chinese, non-Japanese from North America wrestlers. I'm sorry, call me what you want. I'm not racist. We're all people trying to get through the day. But you're a North American promotion. People are going to want North American wrestlers as the majority. And these Japanese and Chinese girls, like the triple threat match that was between, I can't remember the names, okay? So shoot me. But the triple threat match at Fyter Fest that had Nyla Rose versus the 2 Japanese girls that they were going against, that was involved. It was a joke. It was an absolute joke. They were like hitting their arms on Nyla Rose's back. They weren't doing much. They can't pick her up. They can't knock her down. The only way they could do that is literally run and throw their bodies at her. They can't slam anybody bigger than themselves, and they're damn small as it is. They can't really do much of a submission to them. They can't land any huge impacts. They can't do much. all they can do is run and throw their body at you. Like, I'm sorry, but that gets boring. And an example of that is when Shima was wrestling against Kenny Omega at Fight for the Fallen. Now, I thought Shima was very good in his match against Christopher Daniels at Fyter Fest, but when he went against Kenny Omega, all he was doing was Meteor. That's all he did. Meteor, like landing on the guy. These Japanese wrestlers. Now, Shima's able to do the perfect driver where he picks the guy up and then drops with him. That obviously takes strength because he's got to pick the guy up. So that's cool. I think Shima has enough power in him to do more than just throwing his body. But at Fight for the Fallen, that's all he was doing. Meteor. Even Alex Marvez at one point said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That was obviously in response to somebody else on the roster saying something about it. He was just a one-trick pony. And I hope that the Perfect Driver and the Meteor are not basically the only two big moves he's got, because that's going to be a really big shame. I thought he was a lot better than that, and I'm hoping he's a lot better than that. I'm hoping I'm jumping the gun here. But if that's all he's got in terms of being able to do big moves and big spots and that I was really hoping big things for him. I'm sure he has big things, but they need to incorporate more moves in their tag division. And they need more big guys on their male division. Their male singles division needs to be bigger in terms of the amount of guys they have in it, and they need to be tougher looking. Jim Cornette said himself, the guys look like they don't have any physique. And they don't look like they have any physique. Look at the Young Bucks. Look at Shima, look at Joey Janela, Darby Allin, like Jimmy Havoc, especially Jimmy Havoc. These guys, they don't have any physique. They look like they haven't touched. They're starving themselves and they haven't been near a gym ever. Like, when I think of All Elite Wrestling, I think of people being at the elite of their game. Strong guys, muscular guys who look like they have power. Like, off the top of my head, the only guys they have that I think looks like they have power is Kenny Omega. Because of Chris Jericho's fame, we know he has power. John Moxley, Dustin Rhodes, Cody Rhodes, Luchasaurus. And Christopher Daniels, maybe. Those are 7 guys who look like they can pick somebody up and slam them. But none of the, with the exception of Luchasaurus, they don't have any big guys. He's the only big guy they have. MJF is another one. Sorry, he looks like he has a lot of power. The only one in All Elite Wrestling more built or bigger than MJF right now is Luchasaurus. So I think their singles division needs to look tougher, which means they need bigger guys. They do. So anyway, that's my thoughts on All Elite Wrestling right now. And going forward, I think the tournaments are going to have to be a bit longer than they are because they announced round 1, the semifinals, and the finals so far. And they haven't released all the matches for it, but you know that there's going to be multiple matches because the winner of the Young Bucks and Private Party, they're going to have an opponent who's the winner of another match, which would be 2 teams going against each other in the first round. So you're going to have the Young Bucks and Private Party. The winner of that goes to the second round and faces the winner of this match, and who knows what those 2 are going to be. I'd imagine that it's probably going to be Lucha Brothers and SCU, maybe, going against the winner of that, right? The winner of that goes on to the finals. But the thing is, they would have to have an opponent. Who is their opponent going to be? And then, of course, the Dark Order has a buy-in for the second round, which is fine. But there's going to be other matches involved as well to get the finalists in the finals to go against the winner, of the matches announced so far. So there's a lot to do with the tag team tournament not announced yet. I predict there's going to be minimum of another 3 teams involved, a minimum of another 3 teams. Dark Order's for 3 to 4 teams still involved in the tag team tournament. There's going to have to be. They've only announced 1 match so far, so it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be involved. But anyway, this is 39-minute video. You know what? To be honest with you, this is my channel. This is what I'm about. I don't believe that I'm ever going to make a short video. If If you like short videos, then you can just go to other channels. This is like a rant channel. It's like a news channel, rant channel. You know what I mean? It's kind of combining the two, speculations that what might happen and stuff. It's like a discussion channel, really. The comment section is going to be heavily used in this channel, but I just don't like short videos. And for me, this is like getting out my interest of All Elite Wrestling as well, not just reporting the news. So don't expect short videos. You know what I mean? Turn it on, download it, listen to it while you're doing the dishes or something if you find me interesting at all. Let me know what I suck on, which is probably everything at this point, but let me know what I need to improve on. Don't tell me about shorter videos, though. I'm not going to make... Don't say, dude, it's a 45-minute video, you need to make it shorter, because I'll just ignore it. When you say stuff like that, I'm just going to ignore you. Tell me on how I can, like, deliver the news. If you want the news summarized at the beginning, and then a part where it's just a rant, I'm thinking about doing that, but I want to know your thoughts on it. Tell me if I'm repeating myself. Tell me if, like, talking about one thing that ties into something else, if that's annoying, if you just want it all in one section, you know what I mean? Because usually lately I've been finishing the 3 parts that's announced at the beginning, and then at the end I might go back and talk about something. If you don't like that, if you want it all in its own section, that's fine, tell me. But that's episode 4 today. Have a splendiferous night.